Hey everyone, FlightSimGuy here, and welcome to another episode of Microsoft Flight Simulator Action. Take the headphones off. Alright, so this time around, doing something a little bit different. Normally I plan these episodes a little bit ahead in advance, but today was a little bit different because I spoke to my daughter who was in college in Colorado, and she's complaining that they were getting a lot of snow. And it was like a blizzard with a lot of snow and wind and all this stuff. And I'm like, oh really? So obviously, after I left work, I rushed home, fired up Flight Simulator, and figured I'd do a mission from LA to Denver. I was doing a cross-country series where I started out from a small airport in Seattle to SeaTalk, and from SeaTalk to Vegas in the Cessna Citation X. I wanted to go from Vegas to Denver using one of the military jets, the F-16 or the F-18, but autopilot's not what I'm used to, and I'd have to manually fly it, and it's long, so I just been putting it off. But I figured I'd go ahead and do this hop in the E-190 because we like flying into bad weather. And if you don't believe me, the next time you see there's bad weather in Chicago O'Hare, go ahead on to VATSIM and look at the VATSIM monitor, and you'll see a whole bunch of planes flying in there. We like flying into bad weather, so I figured I'd go ahead and give it a shot. In this case, it was marginal IFR in Denver because it was a snowstorm, so I figured I'd go ahead and program the FMS. I spent about half an hour making sure I got everything right. The vertical profile, the route was pretty straightforward, but getting the speeds for the auto throttle and the vertical profile set up, I spent an awful lot of time trying to get this thing programmed properly, and I'll explain to you how that turned out a little bit later. But yeah, so I went ahead and did SimBrief for the flight plan, and you've seen a whole bunch of clips on how that's done, so I want to skip over that. Also, I did not have my microphone on my headphone. I didn't record the audio or the voiceover at that point, so I figured I'd just do a voiceover separately when I did the final edit in Sony Vegas, and that's what this is. So not going to go through the entire FMS programming here, just I kept this strip in there just to go over the fact that I spent a lot of time trying to get the FMS in a good shape, and it wasn't worth the effort, put it to you that way. So let's go ahead and run through the rest of the startup, and I'll catch you back on the taxi.
Las Vegas ground, Southwest 9er, text 9er, taxi to the Southwest 9er, text 9er, taxi to gate Charlie 1, via taxiway Alpha 4, Bravo, Bravo 4. Taxiing to gate Charlie 1, via taxiway Alpha 4, Bravo, Bravo 4, Southwest 9er, text 9er. Southwest 9er, text 9er, continue taxi. Roger, Southwest 9er, text 9er. Southwest 9er, text 9er, pole position, caution to departing Airbus A320. Pole position, Southwest 9er, text 9er.
the elastic band over your head and tighten the straps if necessary. Please don't tamper with, destroy, or disable the laboratory smoke detectors. If you have any questions regarding safety, or if you'd like something from the galley or bar, please ask on behalf of your flight crew. Thanks for your attention. It's our pleasure to have you aboard, and we hope you enjoy your flight.
So the main problem I'm having with this particular airplane is, and I don't think it's the software, I think it's just me, the auto throttle and the not the FSX itself per se, but the auto throttle where the plane adjusts the throttle itself to manage the speed. Here's where I've been having some problems, and I think it's because I'm not setting it up properly. With the ERJ series, there is no auto throttle. You manage all that manually. With this one, you can set it up so that the plane manages the thrust based on the profile that you set up in the FMS. This was actually my second taking off because I screwed up the FMS programming, and when I took off, it banked to the right and came crashing into the ground, so I had to reset it. And I also learned or figured out how to use FSU IPC autosave because I'm switching my angles so much in these things that eventually it crashes on me and I lose stuff. But with the autosave, I'm in better shape. Alright, so let's go ahead and watch the takeoff.
Throttle.
Alright, so what you did not see shortly after the takeoff was the engine powering down to maintain a speed of 160, which is just above stall speed, and it stayed at a low altitude until it hit the first waypoint. Then it banked left and initiated its climb, which was trying to get to another waypoint at an altitude which was way too high for the distance in between the two. So it pitched up to a point where it, normally it would stall, but the engines went flat out. And given the thrust to weight ratio for this plane, it didn't. It just went right up there. So I went ahead and cut that part out because, like I said, no more automatic vertical profiles for me. I'm flying this thing manually. So at this point, I'm getting into a good climb profile, getting up to I think it was 35,000 feet, and it was relatively uneventful. And the weather coming out of Vegas was pretty good. So here we're going banking to the next waypoint. I really like this particular camera view. Thank God for EasyDock. Had that thing for a couple of years before I even started figuring out how to use it. One thing I noticed about the ERJ, once I got to cruising altitude, it had a hard time maintaining level flight. It kept bobbing up and down, maybe 500 feet plus or minus the assigned altitude. And ditto for the auto throttle at this altitude. It just kept having to make these minor adjustments to maintain proper flight, and I'm pretty sure the real thing doesn't do that. I thought that was an interesting development. Another reason why from now on I'm not using the auto throttle. I'll just go ahead and fly that part manually. I'm so used to it with the ERJs. So I figured, since we're cruising, autopilot's turned on, I figured I'd check out the virtual cockpit. There is an EasyDock camera that you can use for that, but I just went ahead and used the Microsoft camera views. So I went into the cabin and figured I'd just pan around. It looks pretty cool, just like the real thing. Flown in this thing many times. And I also figured I'd check out that virtual flight attendant. I cannot imagine what's going through the developers' minds when they create these things. In the Cessna Citation X, they had a god-awful ugly woman with her man hands. And in this one, we have this girl of sorts, which looks like a robot. I mean, we go through all this trouble to create really realistic flight models and airplanes, and we can't do a much better job creating a virtual flight attendant. Besides, I've never seen flight attendants with boobs like this. I mean, seriously. They went through all that trouble to get that shine on there. Look at that. It's popping out of her blouse and everything. Really, guys? I mean, seriously? So, poking about, looking around. I moused over all of that stuff, see if I could open the door in flight, but I guess you can't do that. And what I'm going to do is set up an EasyDock free motion camera for the cabin, so I can literally poke around every nook and cranny on these planes, see what they look like. You can hear my heater going in the background there. But yeah, we can do a better job with the flight attendants, really. And at some point, I made my way back into the cabin. Not there. There we go. Going back, going back, going back. And obviously, the best position in the cabin is over the wings by the window. And I think that's what I did with using the FlightSim camera views. Also, I have an FS recorder, and if you're gonna make videos of flights and put them on the internet, you need FS recorder, because you can do just about anything with the cameras there, and any good filmmaker would tell you that you gotta have the different camera angles. So I have one video rendering right now showing the potential of that particular piece of software. So I'm gonna put this right by the window so that when I do the landing I can catch the passenger view out the window of the landing, which I think we're all used to, since that's the sight that we see when we fly. Hopefully, we wish we're looking over the instruments in the cockpit, but hey, that's the reason why we're doing this thing. We're not real pilots. I gotta tell you, one of the things I like about this plane is its traffic collision alert system. It does a really good job of throwing a fit whenever there's another plane nearby. Descend! Descend! Anyway. I think I'm approaching my top of descent. Should be heading down at some point. And obviously we're flying into a snowstorm in Denver, Colorado. So at some point I'm expecting to go completely IFR. Alright, so we're in the clouds now, getting that Millennium Falcon effect through the front window. Speaking of Millennium Falcon, the new Star Wars movie is out. A friend of mine had tickets and I was supposed to go see it on Friday, but oh my god, the crowds were just crazy, and I'm thinking, you know what, I'm just gonna wait. Usually when I go to the movies, there's only like 10 to 12 people in there tops, and I have the whole place to myself. I'm in no mood to fight those crowds. Anyway, so coming in at this point, I'm all on the instruments, and the plane is still flying the vertical profile itself. And the fact that I don't know what it's going to do as opposed to what I think it should be doing makes me nervous. And at some point I'm going to turn off the the vertical navigation and start using the vertical speed and the altitude setting. That makes things so much easier. Alright, so I had called the Denver Tower and they said IFR conditions, so my request to land was rejected. And that's because I didn't file a flight plan with the simulator, which I never do. So I told it, you know, go to hell, I'm coming in anyway. Luckily for me, winds were coming from the north, 360 or 0, so I figured I'd just land on runway 34 right. Denver has 3 runways pointing north to south out in the middle of nowhere. I'm not sure if you've ever flown into Denver, but it's pretty barren and isolated out there. So I just went ahead and chose that runway and figured I'd bring it in. Now, as you can see, by the time I got there, it had cleared up somewhat, so I used an instrument approach using the lateral waypoints in the FMS, but the final landing, like always, if you've been watching my videos, all of my landings for the most part I do by hand. I'm very good at taking off and flying the flight plan, but when it comes to landing, I can't seem to get the final approach and into the runway on the autopilot. I'm not sure what I'm doing wrong, but I can't seem to get it to line up, intercept the ILS and glide scope, and have it take it down to the runway automatic. I'm always screwing something up and having to turn off the autopilot and land manually. So let's go ahead and watch the rest of the landing. This new add-on I got is called GSX, Ground Services for FSX, and it has this pretty cool feature where after you land, you don't have to fight with the taxi diagrams to figure out how to get to the parking. So you can go ahead and request this service where this little vehicle comes out and guides you to where you want to go. So I figured, you know what, let me go ahead and turn it on and try this. So I got this guy out, and he's leading me back to the parking, or to the gates, and I'm there following him. At some point I'm going to learn how to do custom deliveries, by the way. And I learned something very interesting. If you don't follow this guy just right, this happens. He turns away and abandons my taxi due to something unsafe. I guess I was going too fast or too close to him or something. So then you can do this warp to feature where you turn off your engines, turn on the brakes, and you can immediately warp to the gates. So I figured I'd give that a shot. And ooh, look where I am. Looks cool, right? No. And then the software had the balls to tell me that I did a shitty job of parking. Yeah, right. He warped me into this position. And it just puts me right in the middle of the building. For some reason, FSX collision feature didn't blow me up. So I figured, oh, you know what? Let me just go into Shift P and back myself out nice and slow. Looks pretty cool, huh? So I'm there backing out, backing out, backing out. And since this is GSX running in the dynamic FSX environment, obviously nothing is going to go according to plan. And at this point the flight's done, so I'm just screwing around, right? So I'm like, okay, I'm backing out, and here comes this other jagoff. Gonna take my spot even though I'm sitting right there. And I'm pretty sure you can figure out the rest. Anyway, that's enough from me. FlightSimGuy here. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.